Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
Hello, and welcome back to the Curious Kid podcast. Our listeners always make us feel special with their emails and Apple Podcast reviews. One of our listeners found a creative way to merge the two. Check this out.
Mailbag!
Mailbag! Hi, Olivia and Jacob. My name is Sam. I'm 5 years old from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I really like your podcast. My favorites were the episodes about fruit, candy, and the internet. I listen to it when I'm in the car after skiing. Me and my dad are planning a trip to New York City and are flying into the Newark airport. We might take a tunnel into New York City. Could you do a podcast about subways one day? Keep up the great work. Sam from Toronto, Canada.
Thanks for the review, Sam. We're getting curious about subways for you.
That was an amazing review. We really appreciate it so much when a listener takes a minute or two to leave us a review. It helps us in a big way. If I'm not mistaken, Sam is the first listener that has ever left us something to get curious about in a review.
I can't wait to learn more about subways. They are really neat.
I agree. I grew up in New York City, so I've spent lots of time underground in the subway. I never really thought about how fascinating those underground tunnels are, and I can't wait to learn more. What's the question of the week?
The question of the week is, which world city has more subway riders than any other?
Growing up in New York, I would have guessed New York is the answer. But guess what? New York City ranks 7th on the list with a staggering 1.8 billion riders per year. The city in first place has more than twice as many riders. Can you guess which city it is?
Why are subways necessary? Can't people just ride cars?
Great question. In order to understand why subways were necessary, it helps to know what the Industrial Revolution was. Hundreds of years ago, people needed to do their work by hand. Machines didn't exist to do the work faster and better like they do today. For that reason, many people lived and worked on farms in the country. Then, technology started improving and factories were built in cities. So people started to leave the country to start a new life in the city. The population of those cities went up very quickly. When the cities became really crowded, getting around was very difficult because the streets were just too congested.
London was the first city that decided that something had to be done.
The roads in London were clogged up, and there was no more space on the roads. So what did they decide to do?
They decided to put a subway system underground.
When that was first suggested, people must have thought it was crazy. But the London Underground, which is the oldest subway in the world, opened in 1863. Paris followed in 1900, and New York City in 1904.
New York City needed the subway very badly.
You're not kidding. Check out this statistic. Due to the Industrial Revolution and to people immigrating to New York from Europe, the population of New York City went from less than 1 million in the year 1870 to nearly 3.5 million 30 years later in the year 1900. New York had no choice but to start transporting people underground.
Today, there are more than 160 subway systems in the world.
And many of them were created due to overcrowding and pollution.
Why was there pollution? Very few people owned cars when the first subways were built.
Because people used horses to get around, and horses poop and pee. A lot. Get ready for a statistic you never wanted to know. The average 1,000-pound horse will make 37 pounds of poop and 2.4 gallons of pee daily. And horses were used by many people to get around. Just think about how bad the streets smelled before subways and cars were being used regularly.
The New York City subway has more than 450 stations.
And that's an incredible number because all those stations are crammed into 240 square miles. And if you laid all of the train tracks in New York City end to end, it would stretch from New York to Chicago. The London Underground, which many people call the Tube, has 275 stations. Here's a cool fact about the Metropolitan Subway Station of Paris. No building in Paris is more than 547 yards from a metro station. That is very convenient.
How in the world did they build tunnels underground?
It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that. First, let's discuss how they used to do it back when the first subway stations were being created. And then we will discuss how they do it today, because both methods are very different.
The subway systems in London, Paris, and New York were done by hand.
The New York City subway tunnels were formed by nearly 8,000 workers. Many of them got hurt doing the work. Later on, they used different methods as well, including dynamite, to form underground tunnels.
A common method they used to use is called the cut and cover method.
And that's exactly what they used to do. Cut and then cover. Let me explain. Workers would dig a trench underground and then cover it up. They would add supports on both sides and cover the tunnel with a beam or truss so that the roadway could be rebuilt over the tunnel.
So they will tear up the street to make a tunnel underground and then build the street again.
That's exactly right. The streets above ground already existed and were designed for people to get places as quickly as possible. Why not have the underground tunnels follow the same path as the above ground streets? This avoids two big issues. First, you don't have to worry about precisely making sure that the random tunnels you were building underground would go where you needed them to go. Second, you didn't have to worry as much about digging into something you needed to avoid, like the foundation of a building.
How do they build subway tunnels today?
They use a really super duper awesome machine called a tunnel boring machine, or a TBM.
The word boring is in the name. It can't be that awesome.
It is totally awesome. The word boring actually has two definitions. The first, as you already know, means not interesting. The boring we are talking about refers to something that makes a hole by revolving. That's what a tunnel boring machine does. It's pretty much a massive machine that creates an underground tunnel, and while it is moving, it is able to support the tunnel it is digging.
That is so cool. Once they are built, how do subways work?
Subway trains run on electricity. A lot of electricity. It runs on rails, which are similar to train tracks. There is a third rail that supplies power to the train. In New York City, the third rail carries 625 volts of electricity. That is a whole lot. Many subways are operated by people, but some are transitioning to trains that are computerized and driverless.
How could you breathe in an underground tunnel?
That's a great question. Subway systems have fans and air shafts that help circulate fresh air. Right now, New York City is undergoing an upgrade to their subway system. The new system is going to move 600,000 cubic feet of fresh air underground every minute. That is crazy.
How do you keep such old subway trains safe?
You're right. You've seen me take the cars into the shop occasionally for repairs. What happens with these subway systems that are sometimes more than 100 years old that have been taking a beating from the heavy subway train cars, extreme weather, and wear and tear. Well, there is another cool machine called the geometry train. It runs on the track and detects areas of the track that need repairs. In New York City, it identifies any area that is more than 1¼ inches out of alignment.
If you don't make those fixes, the train could derail.
Derail is the word for a train that comes off the tracks. If the rails aren't straight and sturdy, a train could definitely derail. So making fixes is very, very important. How about we answer the question of the week? Which city's subway system has the most riders in the whole world?
The answer is Beijing, China.
Beijing, which is the capital of China, has a subway system that has 3.66 billion riders per year. Holy moly, that is a lot of riders. Before we get going, we have a big thank you to make.
Thank you, Moran C.
Moran is our newest patron. It means so much that many of our listeners love Curious Kid Podcast so much that they want to help support the show. For more details on how to support the show and all the amazing perks you get for your support, please visit us at patreon.com. That's Patreon. We have a really special announcement for all our patrons in the Season 4 finale, so stay tuned for that. Okay, Olivia, let's reveal the next letter in the secret code for the Season 4 finale giveaway.
The letter is I, as in ice cream.
Delicious. That's I, as in ice cream. As a reminder, all you have to do is get the letters we reveal in the 12 episodes, starting with episode 90, and they will spell out a secret code. Email us that code for your chance to win some amazing stuff. It's time to thank a city that loves listening to the podcast.
Thank you, Denver, Colorado.
Thank you so much for your support, Denver. If you live in the Mile High City, send an email to us at CuriousKidPodcast@gmail.com so we can thank you by giving you early access to an upcoming episode. One of you will even get something fun from the podcast in the mail. Even if you aren't from Denver, send us an email to say hello. We can still proudly say that we've replied to each and every one of the emails we've received. You can also say hi by leaving us a voicemail. Just call 856-425-2324. You can tell us what you're curious about. You can tell us your favorite episodes so far. You can tell us what you had for breakfast today. We're not picky. Join us next week for more curiosity. As always, thank you so much for listening and getting curious with us.